This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome everyone to the AnCan video chat for advanced high risk and recurrent prostate cancer. I'm Len Sierra. I have the privilege of moderating tonight. And we're going to start with a new member, Walter Darden. We'll start with you, Walter. And I'm going to ask you a few questions and you answer my questions, and then we'll do it in sequence so we don't get confused in your chronology, okay?
And Len, let me just cut in a second here because we're pretty honored to have you, Walter. It's people should know that Walter is one of the grandfathers. I hate to say grandfathers, but one of the most eligible advocates in the prostate cancer community. He's been around for a long time, I think longer than I have, and has run groups for many, many years. And it's an honor and a privilege to have you present, and I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rick. So Walter, how old are you?
89.
89. Well, you're certainly old enough to be a granddad, maybe even a great granddad.
I am both.
Good for you. Where do you live, Walter?
Cupertino, California.
Very nice. And so I guess you heard about AnCan through Rick?
Well, I'm not sure how I heard about it. I've been getting some emails about your sessions, and so I've decided I would join in.
Okay, well, we're glad you're here. Walter, when were you first diagnosed?
December of 2001.
Long-time survivor, good for you. And at that time, what was your Gleason score and PSA level?
Gleason was 4 + 4 = 8, and my PSA was 6.3 and doubling every, I don't know, about 10 months, something like that.
Well, that gives all of us hope that someone with high risk and advanced has survived so many years. So at which institution were you diagnosed and by whom?
I was diagnosed by a urologist that was located in San Jose at the time. San Jose, he was associated with Good Samaritan Hospital in San Jose.
Okay, and what was your first treatment, primary treatment?
Brachytherapy.
Okay.
Permanent seeds.
The low dose rate or high dose rate?
Low dose.
Low dose, okay. And how successful was that?
Well, that was very good. I've never had a recurrence in the prostate since. Unfortunately, he did not do multiple therapies, which I should have had at the time. He didn't suggest them, and I didn't know enough at the time to request them.
So he didn't put you on hormone therapy?
No, he did not.
Okay. So I assume at some point you had a recurrence then?
I had a recurrence in 2006. The PSA was doubling every 5 months. We got up to 8.3. And at that time, I went for second opinions. I went to Stanford, UC San Francisco, Memorial Sloan Kettering, and Johns Hopkins, and they all said something different. But there was a common thread in what they said, and they said if you can't find where the tumors are, do hormone therapy, which is what I did.
Okay, so they couldn't find where the tumors were, meaning they scanned you and nothing was shown?
Yeah, but the scans back in 2006 were not good enough to find where they were.
Right. You probably had a conventional bone scan,
Yeah,
scintigraphy?
bone scan and CAT scan.
Right. So they put you on hormone therapy in 2006.
Well, I actually started it in 2007.
And was that lupron?
Well, I started out on lupron, and at that point in time, I read a book by Snuffy Myers,
Right.
and I told my urologist to add casodex and abiraterone, and he did.
Very good.
And that drove it down. And then I also went at that time I went to see Snuffy.
Every time I hear somebody say they were put on Avodart right away, I know it was Snuffy. I'm not sure any other guys do that, but so you went to see him. So he became your medical oncologist?
He was my medical oncologist until he retired, yes.
Okay.
He was my primary medical oncologist. I also have a local one, Shane Dormady.
Okay, and so tell us what's happened since you started the lupron, casodex, and abiraterone in 2007.
Well, I went undetectable, and I stayed undetectable, and then it recurred again in 2009. And Snuffy then sent me over to the Netherlands. The scans in this country couldn't detect tumors at that time, and Snuffy sent me to the Netherlands for the I'm having a senior moment. The scan at anyway, they detected the string of metastatic lymph nodes in along my right iliac in the pelvis. And I came home and I had Mac Roach at UC San Francisco zap them with IMRT. And I also went on triple hormone therapy again. Then I stayed undetectable until 2007. No, well, actually 16. 16, my PSA was going up again and doubling every 5 months. And Snuffy sent me down to Phoenix to get a C11 acetate scan by senior moment again. Anyway, he identified metastatic lymph nodes in my upper abdomen, and they recommended I go down to La Jolla and I get proton therapy for those. I think there were about 3 or 4 metastatic lymph nodes in my upper abdomen. They're in between my spleen and kidneys and so forth. And again, I went on triple hormone therapy, and that drove it down to undetectable.
I'm sorry, did you say you had proton beam for the lymph node? Okay.
Yeah, by Rossi, Carl Rossi.
Right, down in San Diego.
Yeah.
So you went back on the same 3 hormone regimen?
Yes, yes.
And then you were undetectable?
Yep, yep. And then my PSA was starting to go up about 2 years ago, and I was all this time I've been seeing. In addition to Snuffy, I've always been seeing Charles Drake, who was at Johns Hopkins originally, and now he's at Columbia University. And Charles Drake suggested I was taking androgen because my testosterone is zip. And Charles Drake suggested I go off the androgen and start abiraterone again, and that drove me down to undetectable, and I was undetectable for 2 years. And now I just went back on testosterone because I'm getting them tooth implants, and I wanted to make sure my bone would be up to snuff for the tooth implants to be successful. And my PSA has just started up again. It's 0.04. And I'll stay on the androgel for about another month, and then I'll go off.
I'm sorry, you're staying on what? The lupron?
The androgel. That's testosterone supplement.
Testosterone, Len.
They're giving
He's
you
supplement. No, he's supplementing with testosterone. So what's happening is he takes the triple blockade, drives his PSA down. When it's been down for a while, he takes a little testosterone to make him feel better, and holds on to his seatbelt until it starts going up again. Is that right, Walt?
Well, I'm taking the testosterone again because I'm getting tooth implants and I want the bone to be healthy.
Right. But in the past, you took the testosterone, I assume, to feel stronger. I don't know.
No, I really don't. I'm not aware of any real significant changes, whether I'm on testosterone or not.
Okay, so what made you take the testosterone previously?
Well, because if your testosterone is very low, you're at risk for increased cardiovascular problems, increased Alzheimer's, increased diabetes, increased metabolic syndrome. I could go on and on.
Right. No, I mean, we're very familiar with all of that. So it wasn't really, you weren't doing it to make yourself feel better. You were really doing it because you were concerned about the risks of low testosterone.
I was doing, well, originally I was doing it to ameliorate the risk of low testosterone. And then I stopped that and I was undetectable for 2 years. And then I started back up again for my tooth implants. And I'm going to stop as soon as the tooth implants are successful.
Okay. And let me just help you with a couple of names. Fabio Almeida is the guy in Phoenix. And what I think you did with whatever his name was, Jelly, what's his face in Holland, was Ferrahim, right? Is that ring a bell? Ferrahim.
That's the type of scan that they gave in Europe.
The scan you did in Holland was called Ferrahim.
Oh, Jels Berens is the guy who did it. He was
Right,
the
Jelly
urologist. And
Right.
Say it again, the scan?
Ferrahim.
Heme, like iron heme.
Oh yeah. No, it wasn't Ferrahim. That was Jay Tooley was doing that in Florida. It was Yells has a different name for it. Combadex?
Combidex was, yeah, Combidex is also right. Yes.
Yeah, but he was using a slightly different formulation than what Jay Tooley was using.
Right. And you may not know, but Mac was also, at that time when you were being treated by Mac in 2009, Mac was also looking at it as well and trying to get it off the ground.
Yeah, but the FDA wouldn't approve it in this country.
That's right.
So, Walter, have you ever taken bone strengthening agents like fosamax?
No, I've had, I'm just very slightly osteopenia.
Yeah.
I've been holding steady for the last several years.
And you've never actually had bone mets, right? You've only had lymph node.
That's correct.
Very good. So did you have any specific questions for us?
Well, the only question I have is, was it John Vandenberg that had something on his wrist? I don't know what that was.
Oh, yes, that's called the Ember Wave. It's a device to alleviate hot flashes if you're on ADT.
Oh,
Yeah, and it seems to work for everybody. Is that an issue for you?
no, to my wife's chagrin, I've never had a hot flash.
Yeah. She wanted you to know what it felt like from menopause, huh?
That's right.
Exactly.
I can't blame her. Well, okay. Guys, any questions for Walter? Congratulations, Walter. Your disease has been managed beautifully over the years. You're obviously very knowledgeable. Glad you're here with us. I'll just open it up to the group here if they have questions.
Yeah, can I ask a question about what you said about long-term, very low testosterone from hormone treatments? I'm on Firmagon now for, I don't know, 3 years. And my testosterone is always near zero. But you mentioned a bunch of different risks over the long term for really low testosterone.
Well, yeah, you mentioned almost any disease, and you increase the probability of that disease.
Okay. So over the years, you just supplemented your testosterone when it seemed to be a good time to do so?
Well, when I was undetectable, Snuffy originally put me on testosterone, and then since Snuffy retired, my primary oncologist is Mark Schulz in Marina Del Rey in the LA area, Los Angeles area. But I've also used as a second oncologist, Charles Drake at Columbia University. I've been seeing him since 2006.
Well, my PSA is way too high anyway, but I was just curious about that. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, well,
when
Snuffy once said that if you have low testosterone and you're not treated for it, that's malpractice. But if you're got your testosterone suppressed because of it's the proper thing to do in your treatment regimen, so be it. You just have to run the risk.
Okay, well, maybe I'll get undetectable someday.
Walter, how high did your T levels get when you were taking the androgel?
Oh, about 600.
Oh, that's very good.
Make us all jealous there, Walter.
You know, Walter, it's
Pat Martin had a good question, which I should have asked myself. Have you ever had any genetic testing?
Yeah, and they've all been negative. I didn't have any on my biopsy because the biopsy was done in 2001, and it's not worth testing at this time for any genetics because the tumor has obviously mutated many times since then. But I've had germline testing a couple of times, I think it's 3 or 4 times, and they've always come out negative.
And do you have any secrets of your success? Diet, exercise, anything unusual there?
Well, yeah, I've been a pesca vegan since 2007. I'm a vegan, but I eat seafood.
Right.
I started out on a vegan diet, and Snuffy said you need more protein, and so he said add seafood. And so I've been, and then also I spend 2 hours in the gym 2 or 3 days a week, where I do 40 minutes of aerobics, 40 minutes of strength, and 40 minutes of stretching and floor exercises.
Amazing.
I also run a meditation group, and I do some yoga.
Wow. That is awesome, Walter. You are a role model. Thank you.
Well, I would say that exercise is number one. The studies that have been going on at UC San Francisco show that exercise, vigorous exercise, will substantially reduce the probability of your dying within 5 years.
Yeah, we're all believers in that philosophy. We don't always practice it, but we believe it.
So, Walter, it's Ken Anderson. I'm probably 30 years younger than you. But I wanted to see if there was a possibility to open up a line of communication with you.
Communication about what?
Oh, just about prostate cancer.
Oh,
Would you
yeah.
be okay? Would you be okay sharing your email?
Yes, I will do that. I will send both my email and my phone number.
Great.
Walter, you can send that email to info@ancan.org, and I'll make sure it gets to Ken and to anybody else that wants it.
All right, guys, can we move along, or does anyone else have questions for Walter or comments? All right, Walter, thank you so much. It's a
You're very
pleasure
welcome.
to have met you. And we hope you'll keep coming back. I think Steve Nordstrom, you told us you were new also, correct?
Well, I was on once in 2008.
Okay, but I think, Rick, you wanted to treat Steve
I don't
like
know what you call me.
Sorry?
I do want to treat Steve as a new person because the group doesn't know about him. Steve has been a very solid supporter of AnCan, and I'd like to accord him the time. And Ken, by the way, although Steve doesn't live in Phoenix, he does spend some time in Phoenix because his brother lives there.
Okay, Steve, so you have an idea of the line of questioning I'm gonna feed you, and we're gonna start with how old are you?
62 today.
Oh, okay.
Today, happy birthday.
Today.
Today.
Yes, happy birthday.
Thank you.
That's exactly a week after me, Steve.
I heard them
And,
sing you happy birthday. So,
Steve, where do you live?
I live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, but we're selling our house and we'll be out here in about 3 weeks. And then I'll spend time between our house in Telluride, Colorado, and in Lanark, Illinois.
Are you a skier?
Yes.
Okay. Sounds like a good move then for you.
Yeah. It's a dream.
And so, Steve, when were you first diagnosed?
August of 2017.
Okay, and what was your Gleason score and your PSA?
The Gleason was 4 + 5, 9, and my Gleason was around 6.
Okay. And where were you diagnosed and by whom?
I was diagnosed at Mayo Clinic up in Rochester.
Okay.
I can't even remember the name of the guy.
Okay. So what was your first line of treatment?
I had my prostate removed at Northwestern in Chicago by Dr. Ed Schaefer. But my PSA never went to 0. It went to like 0.35. So I quickly got a bunch of advice and moved to salvage radiation after a short period with hormone therapy for 2 years.
That's not so short. So,
Yeah.
and you had the salvage radiation therapy in Chicago also?
No, I did that actually in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, at a local facility.
Alrighty, and then post salvage, what was your PSA?
Undetectable.
Very good.
Of course, I was taking Firmagon for 17 months and then moved to Lupron for the next, 6 months.
Okay, how did you manage on Firmagon? Just curious.
Well, I wanted to do everything I could, and I thought that was better, but I hated the shot, and I finally got just sick of it after 17 months and moved to the Lupron and couldn't believe how great it was.
Brother, I'm with you. I went through the same experience with Firmagon. Eventually, I started getting fevers after the shots. Feeling
Yeah,
like
I did.
flu. It's
Yep.
terrible.
Yep, it's hard. It's hard on you.
Okay. All right. So, what is your? Did you ever have genetic testing?
Yes, and it was all negative.
Okay.
BRCA and all the usual ones.
Right. So you had germline or inheritance?
Yeah, I did germline. I never did somatic. So.
Okay. You could still do it. I assume they still have your biopsy tissue from the prostatectomy.
I'll check with Dr. Schmulowitz. My slides have been sent around all over, so I'd have to verify that.
Okay. Any cancer in your family?
No, not at all. Except my mom had lung cancer, but she was a heavy smoker.
Right. So what's your status right now? What's your PSA level?
Well, after I got off hormone therapy, I was undetectable all the way through 2020, through half of 2021, and then out of the blue, my PSA started rising. It got to 0.3 in August, and then quickly went up to 0.6, and so of course I went and saw Dr. Schmulowitz at University of Chicago because I heard about him from you guys, and he's a great doctor, and he recommended I get a PSMA scan, which I did, and I have one lesion on my L1 lumbar, and that was it. And so he recommended I go on Zytiga and Lupron for 2 years with the stereotactic ablation on the L1, which I'm going to have here in about a week and a half.
Okay. Is there, does anybody know, maybe Rick or Herb or anybody, is there a risk in using SBRT in a lumbar lesion, L1?
I think it really, I mean, what I've heard is that it just really depends on the location of the lesion.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's very near the spinal cord, I've known occasions when they won't do it, but most of the time, from what I recall, that they will treat. Is there anyone else on the call who's had spot RT to their vertebrae? It's not.
Wait, did you say spot RT? Radio
Yes.
therapy?
Spot
Yeah.
radiation therapy.
Yeah, I've had T11 and T12 done over the last 3
And
years.
I've had it as well.
Okay.
Yeah, they plan to give me an MRI about a week before, where they will verify that they can do it and really make sure they don't get too close to the cord.
Okay.
what they did for me also. They did it shortly before.
And I will do that at the University of Chicago. So
So after the Zytiga and lupron, what's your PSA now?
I just started the Zytiga about a week and a half ago, and I get on lupron next week. So I haven't checked my PSA since, but I feel pretty good now.
Okay, great.
Right. Or I guess my PSA, I didn't tell you this, but I went over to see Dr. Nordquist over in Omaha, and he checked my PSA, and it actually had gone down just a little bit. So I don't know if that was due to the Zytiga, but so.
Did Nordquist think that you might be a candidate before you started the HT for his trial or not?
Well, I'm definitely a candidate for it, but he actually thought I was on a good plan with Dr. Schmulowitz, and I read through the trial for that lutetium for a guy like me, and it just looked pretty intense. So after I talked to Nordquist, I felt pretty good about the decision. So
okay, I'm glad you went to see him. Steve, have you ever measured your bone density?
yes, yep. And I have had osteopenia and osteoporosis, but I was on Fosamax and got during my remission, I got back to good health. I mean, healthier bone. But that's where I'm at now. I'm osteopenia.
So you measured it recently before you went back on the. Have you measured it before you've gone back?
Yeah. Well, it was. It was. I think March of 2021.
Okay.
I mean, that's
and
a good
I am
question.
working with an endocrinologist too, and she's going to see me.
Okay. Yeah. Just FYI, they gave me annual shots of Zometa, so I didn't have to use. I didn't have to do Fosamax, and that worked pretty well.
Right, and I definitely think.
I know Dr.
something
Schmulowitz is talking
order.
about that.
Go ahead, Herb.
No, I think it's in order.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Herb?
I said if you're osteopenic and on ADT, Zytiga, I think it's definitely in order to get a bone strengthening agent, denosumab or some other equivalent. And they do work.
Yeah, I'm planning to do it as soon as they give me the go ahead.
I mean,
yeah, what was it, the Peace One trial, Herb, where
yes,
yeah, it was proven to drastically reduce bone fractures.
Yeah,
okay,
I need to do that, especially if I'm skiing.
Steve, do you
right.
have?
I mean, if you're skiing, if you're going to put any stress on the bone, you want it as strong as you can get it.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions for us, Steve?
The only question I have at this moment is about Zytiga with prednisone. He has me on the low-fat breakfast regimen where you just take one pill.
Schmulowitz, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I assume that's a good way to go. It's what he told me to do. So, does anybody have any advice on that?
Well, it could
I
save
think
you a lot.
I would say more of us should be on it, except our docs don't seem to be on the right track. They don't want to try it.
Interesting.
Steve, what do they have you taking for that low-fat breakfast? What does it consist of?
Well, all they tell you is take the Zytiga and the prednisone with a low-fat breakfast, and that's all I've gotten. And of course, I just eat oatmeal with fruit and very low-fat stuff. So
Well, I think they,
You recommend 7 grams and no more than 7 grams of fat and 300 calories. But it is basically, as you said, avoid the bacon, sausages, oils, that type of thing. That's what I've been doing.
Okay, good. I can handle that. So,
Yeah,
I think
what you should know, Steve, you probably do because I know you listen pretty avidly to the recordings, is that was Dennis Correa that just spoke up. And before he took a holiday, he was successfully on abiraterone for, was it 4 years, Dennis?
Yeah, that's correct.
So,
wow.
so that low fat protocol certainly worked for Mr. Correa.
Well, that's good to know. And the only other question I have has to do with side effects. Are there any, I know you need to watch out for the low potassium, the high blood pressure. Is there anything else that people have had being on abiraterone and being on prednisone for, up to 2 years or whatever I'm going to be on?
Oh, I mean, one thing they're going to watch for is your liver enzymes.
Yeah, okay.
They have to check your liver function. That's going to be that's critical for Abby.
Okay.
And then yes, it will raise your blood. It may raise your blood pressure. Are you
Okay.
already on any antihypertensives?
No. I'm
Okay,
not.
so you're in good shape there.
Yeah. And I try to eat a real low fat diet and
Mm-hmm.
just seafood, things like that. So, and that's about all the questions I have.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Walter. I think, Walter, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that a fellow in our
Unless somebody
local
has anything they want to say about it.
could not have radiation to a bone met, and he found a doctor who would freeze that met, and then fill the hole in the bone with I think it was epoxy. I'm not sure, to restore the strength. So if something is not, if radiation is not possible, you might look into having the met frozen.
Okay.
That's good advice. I'll check that out.
Yeah, I don't think we've heard cryo for use in spot radiation before, Walter. So that's really a interesting approach.
Rick, I believe Les Shoulderup had that procedure, but he's not on tonight, so he can't confirm.
Oh, you know what? I think you're right. Let me look at my notes. But he didn't have to have. I don't think he had to have the Met built up, though, did he? Let's have a look.
Well, Rick's doing that. Steve, why don't you ask Shmulewicz what he considers the proper low-fat breakfast for you to take the Zytiga with, because he's the one that ran the trial.
Yeah, I will do that. That's a great question. And I'll make sure, and I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Steve, I have a question about this. So I was told to take Zytiga on an empty stomach. This is a different approach and says take it with this special sort of breakfast.
Gary, so you're taking 4 pills. You're taking 1,000 milligrams.
Right.
Food increases absorption of Abby. So if you took 1,000 milligrams with food, you would get overdosed. So Shmulewitz came up with a protocol where you take less with food and that measured that the absorption and the efficacy was the same.
Ah,
So the whole
okay.
point is that food increases the absorption of the drug.
Okay.
So Herb, it wasn't really Shmulewitz because
Whoever it was.
they actually started this. They tried it first time in 2000. I think it was called the 1K trial, and they tried it in 2013 at UCSF. And our buddy Jerry was on that trial for a while, but then he reverted back to regular Abbey, and they canceled the trial after a while. But it goes back a long time.
Right, and NIH had a trial with it too, and I don't know why they're not pushing it either.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But the thing is, Gary, that and as Herb rightly said, and I don't get it, a lot of the docs don't push it. And I think it's got something to do with Janssen. Of course,
Yeah.
now it's generic, but it wasn't generic at the
Rick,
time.
it can't be, because if it were anything to do with the farm industry, my docs have no connections, right? They can do whatever they want for their patient, and they don't know anything to anybody, and that they're still going with 1,000 milligrams. Now,
Herb, you don't think it's money driven?
not in NIH, it isn't.
Do they think
It's
that a
no
lot of
money.
people wouldn't have the discipline to do it?
I'm sorry, Steve.
Would a lot of people not be able to really do the low-fat diet?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's the issue. I think it's worth investigating, and maybe I'll spend some time questioning a bunch of people about this, because it seems to me it's a hell of a lot more convenient to do it.
Yeah.
yeah,
A lot cheaper.
And cheaper.
Right.
We've always said that. We've pushed low fat, the
Yes.
low fat Abbey protocol for years and years and years. Right, Len?
Yes, we have. I was on Zytiga for only a little while, but I was using that single pill with low-fat breakfast, and it seemed to work. I'm going to put for my notes. I'm going to put something in the chat box for everybody.
Well, Steve, next time you're in Phoenix, give a shout out. We'll get together. Ken Anderson.
Sounds great. Yep. We'll do it.
All right, so Steve, okay with you if we move on?
Yeah, and I just want to thank you for the time, and thank you guys for all the work you guys do. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot from watching the videos.
Well, thank you, and we're glad you're here. Keep coming back.
Okay.
Let's go with my fellow moderator, Herb Geller. What have you got for us, Herb?
Oh, so it's not prostate cancer. I've been suffering these days from GERD, and I'm wondering if anybody else has any experience with what to do.
Yeah. What are your symptoms? Like, one of my
All
symptoms
of them.
is constant clearing my throat, bringing up phlegm. So I was told to go on famotidine,
which I'm on a proton pump inhibitor.
Oh, okay.
And I eat small meals, and I eat early way before going to sleep. But I still get heartburn and filling and all the symptoms of GERD. And I'm wondering, when is it time to chase it down further? If any of you have experience, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, Herb, I've had that same issue, and basically I've had to cut out all carbonated beverages. Number one. Number two, eat smaller meals, more frequently rather than, 2-3 big meals a day. And the other thing, unfortunately, is some of the foods that are supposedly good for our cancer, like, the cruciferous, like broccoli, cabbage, and so on, those are big gas producing foods also that can cause that.
Herb, I had a couple of months ago an upper endoscopy because I was having symptoms, and they found an ulcer on the esophagus, and they said they believe that's coming from the prednisone. So they prescribed 40 milligrams of omeprazole, and I actually had another upper endoscopy today, and they said it's much better and that ulcer is almost gone. So but they want me to stay on the omeprazole because they said if you don't, the prednisone will generate it again.
That's interesting. That I hadn't heard.
Here's some news you don't want to hear, Herb, but alcohol exacerbates.
No, I know that. Alcohol and coffee. And I've had this discussion with my GI guy, and his attitude is you got to live.
True.
And, so I've cut back, certainly, on both. But it's still with me more than I could, so I'm really just wondering, I mean, there are procedures, and I know, and I guess nobody on this call has any experience with the procedure, but I have to think about what to do next.
And you cut back on spicy foods, I imagine.
Yes, to a certain extent. Living with a Chinese who puts spice on everything.
Yeah, it's hard to resist. It's so tasty.
I mean, I even found that there's something that I would not normally have thought about, soy cream triggers it.
Soy cream?
Soy milk, the equivalent to ice cream you can get at Trader Joe's made with soy.
Okay.
So it's weird. Anyway, I don't want to take up any more time. Thanks for the insights.
Alkaline foods too. Have you tried that, eating alkaline foods?
Yeah, well, last night we had cheese and that worked. It didn't, I had one of the first free nights of irritation. We had bread, cheese, but of course we had half a bottle of wine too.
I do have a thought, and I'm just wondering about this. The comment that prednisone can irritate and possibly cause this. I wonder if that's true of any steroid or if some steroids are better than others.
I don't know, but I'm certain, given what Gary told me, I'm going to try to do some reading.
Let us know.
Well, maybe you can use that as an excuse to switch from Zytiga to darolutamide.
Maybe.
Okay, thanks, Herb. We're going to go to
Yes.
Brian Davenport. You're up, Brian.
Okay, great. Thank you. It's been a couple of months since I was on the call, but I recently started back on chemotherapy. As you very quickly, in February 2019, I had a Gleason of 10 and a PSA of 305. Using doxycycline and lupron, I had basically 21 months of remission. And then last October, the PSA started to go up again. I was in a trial at NIH for 4 months on immunotherapy, and the PSA went from about a 2.4 to 5.2. And then I was switched over, came out of that trial, was switched over to Abby for 3 months, and the PSA doubled. And then I was put on enzalutamide for 5 months. And again, that had no effect. And in October 15th, my PSA was 10.26. I got great advice from this group, and that I went to Duke Cancer Center and enlisted Dr. Dan George as my quarterback for what I should do going forward. I've received very good treatment at Walter Reed, and I've been very pleased that the doctors at Walter Reed are more than willing to collaborate with Dr. George at Duke to talk about where we need to go in my treatments. I had been scheduled to start a new regimen of chemotherapy with doxycycline, but Dr. George recommended instead that I begin cabaziatxel and carboplatin. And so I started that on the 28th of October, and my PSA was 10.26, and a month later, the PSA was down to 4.89. I've had one other chemotherapy session, and you know, I'm outside of a little bit of soreness. You know, I'm tolerating it without any ill effects. I was playing golf until the temperature shot below 50, but you know, I feel pretty good. Prednisone is also part of, you know, 10 milligrams a day is also part of this regimen. I guess my question is, one of the lab works is my carcinoembryonic antigen, the CEA. The last time it was measured, it was like at 844, which is very high. And I really don't know, when I talk to the doctors at Walter Reed, they basically say, well, at this point, we don't know what your PSA or your CEA is really telling you. We really need to see the scans. And I'm scheduled in December to get a CT scan, a bone scan, and a abdomen MRI. But so my question for the group is, can you tell me any more about the CEA number, and is it something that is there other information I should be aware of, given that it's such a high number? It's consistently gone up since March. You know, it went from 46 to 77 to 113 to 168 to 281 to now it's at 844, as I'm saying. And I'm delighted that the chemo had an impact on the PSA. It's the first positive move down that I've seen in my treatments in over a year. So, but again, that's kind of where I'm at. I go back to see Dr. George the 1st of January, and by that time I will have had 4 chemotherapy treatments and probably 2 other lab works to talk about.
So Brian, my understanding of CEA, carcinoembryonic antigen, is that it's generally considered a non-specific cancer biomarker. However, with regard to prostate cancer, it is, I think, more associated with the neuroendocrine prostate cancer type. So it might be, if it's possible somehow, to get a biopsy, either of a current lesion you have, or maybe a liquid biopsy, I'd like to see them do, you know, a pathology analysis, see if they see any neuroendocrine cells.
Well, I had a bone biopsy in June of a spot in my hip.
Uh-huh.
So would that biopsy be current enough for what you're talking about?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it would, Brian, but here's my question to you. I mean, we've suspected for quite some time, looking at my notes, that your disease could be small cell neuroendocrine. We've talked about that in the group before. So, and I suspect that Dan George came to the same conclusion, which is the reason he added the carboplatin to the cabaziatxel. We talked with you also about cabaziatxel.
Right.
Now, I was going to ask you, what was Dr. George's perspective on this small cell neuroendocrine suggestion or suspicion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it resides in my system. All right, but I don't, Rick, I don't know that I know a definitive question answer back from Dr. George. I probably that I'll have to do that when I see him again in January. But
yeah, I mean, I think it's worth drilling down on this. I mean,
Right.
Whilst on the one hand, I agree with Len that, you know, it might be worth sending that biopsy off to somebody like Epstein at Hopkins to see how he interprets the pathology, because he's going to be able to look at the physical pathology. What I'm suspecting, given that you have you don't have any mutations that have emerged, and Dan is prescribing carboplatin, is that he's come to the conclusion that he should treat you as if you do have small cell neuroendocrine anyway. So I don't know that it would make that much difference to the treatment plan.
yeah, I do I do know my doctor at Walter Reed, when the treatment was switched from docetaxel to cabaziatxel and carboplatin, he was concerned that it was going to be have a lot of side effects. Fortunately, it really hasn't bothered me at all. So, and when I talked to Dr. George about this, he said, you know, you've been a year now where you haven't gotten effective treatment. We really need to go after this aggressively.
Yeah.
And
As you know, we have tremendous respect for Dan George, and you know, I don't think you can do a heck of a lot better. I mean, there are maybe half a dozen other docs in the country, in our view, that are on the same level that he's on. And you know, it surprised me in a way when we first met you that nobody had sort of thought, well, maybe we should give this guy carboplatin. What I would like to do is just get Peter Kafka into this conversation, because Peter went through docetaxel and carboplatin, right, Peter? You didn't do cabaziatxel, you did docetaxel and carboplatin, and you did great for, was it 4 or 5 sessions, and then it caught up with you. Do you want to maybe just share your experience with Brian? Are you there, Peter? Come in Hawaii, come in Maui. His microphone is showing, but we don't hear him. Well, we'll connect you. We'll connect you with Peter directly, because he recently went through very similar treatment, and he did great for 5 sessions, and then he crashed on the 6th session, and then I think he stopped, but it did the trick.
Well, Rick, if it is small cell neuroendogens, what does that foretell?
Well, it's much I think, I don't know what's going on with Peter. I bet he's in his car. That's usually happens when he's in his car. Yeah.
I think he's been abducted by aliens.
No, he's traveling. He's traveling back to Maui. I think he's on a boat.
No, he's back in Maui. We saw him last night.
Yeah.
He was fine last night, but he'll somehow or other he'll come in and talk to us. What does it mean? Look, neuroendocrine. Small cell neuroendocrine disease is difficult to treat. That's what we know. So it does respond to carboplatin, or I should say it does respond to platinum-based chemotherapies. And that's why he's doing it. And that's why your PSA is going down, which is terrific. And have you had 1 session or 2 sessions so far?
I'm on the second. I've had 2 so far.
So you've had 2. So, this is, did he tell you how many sessions he's thinking of in total?
Initially 6, but it could be more.
Okay. So again, you've got the fantastic model of Ken Anderson, who has maintained very well on continuous chemo, has found a way to deal with it. And maybe this, if you tolerate it well, maybe this is a way that you keep the disease in check. And that they're looking all the time. I read something last week about some new treatment for small cell neuroendocrine. The other thing is that maybe there'll be some type of immune therapy. I also don't know. Well, let me back up one. There is an antigen that's expressed by small cell disease. It's not PSMA. I forget the name of the antigen. Herb may remember, or Len, but there's an antigen that's expressed by small cell disease, and there are trials right now to combine that antigen with a radionuclide like lutetium, so that it will be attracted to the cells. Do you, Herb or Len, do you remember what that antigen is? The name of it?
I don't.
Yeah, but so this is the sort of thing, and the fact that you're with somebody like Dan George, he's all over this stuff. I mean, he's going to know. Believe me, as soon as there is a trial, and that's something to talk to him about, Brian. Put it in your notes that when you see him next, ask him about the antigen expressed by neuroendocrine small cell disease that they're trying to pair with a radionuclide. I can tell you for certain that Novartis is working on that, or AAA. I shouldn't say, I mean, Novartis is AAA, but specifically Advanced Accelerator Applications has somebody working specifically, has people working specifically on neuroendocrine disease and radionuclides. And I can find out more about that for you. But the lady who is now back running the prostate cancer stuff was moved over to neuroendocrine for quite some time, and then the new hire left and they pulled her back. But we can find out from them what's going on there too.
Okay, and if you're okay with it, Rick, I'll take the notes I just took and formulate them into questions, and I want to make sure I get them correct. If you wouldn't mind saying, no, you got to add this word. You missed.
Absolutely. You ship them over, and you can tell Dr. George it's that damn Rick Davis who's feeding me this rubbish. Okay.
All right, thank you. That's all I had for tonight.
I have a quick question, if I might. How do you tell if you have neuroendocrine? Is there a special test for that, or?
Oh, I'll give you my take, and then I'll let the other brains trust guys step in. There's a whole bunch of things. First of all, neuroendocrine disease doesn't usually express much PSA. So if you are one of these guys that has always had low PSA, that's a definite clue. Secondly, you can often see under the microscope because it looks different. So when they're looking at your disease, they're doing the pathology, and somebody like Epstein is looking at it, he's going to see that there is a physical difference. You guys are killing me here. I'm never going to be able to get this chat into the when I write this up. There's too much. There's way too much stuff in the chat. So that's the second thing. There are, and Herb and Len will know this, there are certain proteins that are expressed more frequently by small cell neuroendocrine disease. At that point, this is where I turn it over because I'm at the end of my knowledge. Herb, Len?
Yeah, so some of the biomarkers are chromogranin A. Did you ever see any lab results for chromogranin A, Brian?
No, that's the first time I've heard that term.
Okay. Let's see, some of the tumor suppressors associated with small cell are, and again, you'd have to have a genetic analysis, RB1 protein, TP53 PTEN.
Yeah, but I think so. Neuroendocrine means a certain kind of cell that is making hormones. So in other words, neuroendocrine cells are like things that make LHRH and FSH and all these hormones are called neuroendocrine cells. So they're full, and as Len said, a marker for neuroendocrine cells is called chromogranin A because that's what packages the hormone. So I think what you need, I would see, Brian, what about, can they do a liquid biopsy? Can they get circulating tumor cells from you?
He had that, Herb, and it didn't show anything.
It didn't.
No.
Well, it depends on where they sent it, right? I mean, did they look for those things specifically?
Yeah, I mean, the gold standard, Brian, really is to have a top-notch pathologist look at the slide. That's the only real, true, definitive way to diagnose neuroendocrine.
But I think more than look, Len, what it means, you've got to take the tissue and stain it with antibodies to these neuroendocrine things. And that's how they do it. They look for the expression of like chromogranin A or other neuroendocrine markers, but you can't just look at the slide like an H&E stained slide. You really got to do this immunocytochemistry.
Right.
So it's not a normal, they generally do not test for that, I guess, unless.
Correct, Jake. Unless they have a suspicion, in which case again, I can look this up. I'm not exactly sure where they do it, but again, most labs could do it if they had to.
Okay. And if you do have the neuroendocrine, and that's at that point that would generate you, or that would prompt them to use the carboplatin on you.
Right,
like they did with Brian?
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, what makes it more complicated, Jake, is that when they first really noted this around 2014, 2015. They suspected it for a long time, and then they actually did note it that prostate cancer cells, the longer they're treated, adenocarcinomic prostate cancer cells, the longer they're treated, the more they tend to change and morph. And as they change and morph, they take on the characteristics of small cell and neuroendocrine disease.
Right.
And so we have to start treating that disease as if it was small cell neuroendocrine, but it may not express all of the characteristics of small cell neuroendocrine. But we know from experience that it's not going to respond to the way we would treat cells that would respond to hormone-driven prostate cancer. And that's oftentimes why you will see doctors sometimes when they don't have anything else, any other place to go, they'll add carboplatin because they know that your disease is changing. And this is I'm sure you've heard us talk many times, and not only us, but the docs on Euro Today, etc. They often talk about the disease morphing, and when they say it's morphing, what they mean is it's turning into a more untreatable form, and we've got to use very different types of treatment. And Brian, knowing Dan George as we do, I suspect he's on top of the genomic sequencing, but you may just want to check if he's comfortable with the sequencing that was done for you. I have a record that you had sequencing done in 2000. They looked at your tumor, I think, in 2019. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you had no germline mutations, and they didn't find any somatic mutations, is what my notes say, but I may be wrong on that. Is that right?
That's correct.
So again, your disease could have changed, and you may want to review with Dan about doing another somatic test, and sooner rather than later, because with a PSA of 4.8 or 4.9, you probably still have enough circulating tumor cells where they could do a liquid biopsy, and so so it's less invasive. You might want to check with him if he wants to do that before your PSA falls too low.
Okay, thank you. I'll do that.
All right.
Herbert, anything else?
Okay. We're going to go next to Joel Blanchett.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to put something in the chat. It's it comes from, there's two paragraphs that come from Dr. Antonarakis. I just saw him last 17 November to be exact, last week. And while you guys have a chance to read that, I'm going to give you a little background about my dilemma for the past 3 months. I had a PSMA at Walter Reed. Walter Reed said, you have prostate cancer in your right neck. I went to Johns Hopkins. They said, yeah, they're right. We decided the same thing, and you need to take an MRI like Walter Reed said. So I took an MRI. The MRI said, no, you don't have prostate cancer in your right neck. So then I tried to get a hold of Dr. Denmead that had seen me at Johns Hopkins. He wouldn't answer my questions via email. So I decided to go to a head and neck cancer doctor that I already knew, medical oncologist, Dr. Sarma, for those of you in this area. he ordered an Axman PET scan at Metro PET Center in Fairfax. They said, they called me on the phone and said, no, we're not going to give you an Axman PET scan. The PSMA is much better. So I said, well, wait a minute, you don't understand the problem. So I explained the problem. They said, all right, come out in here. So two doctors sat me down on their computers and compared notes and opinions and about all my scans, including my NIH scans of 2 years ago. And they said, we can't. They also gave me a CAT scan and a bone scan, or two of them actually, because when they were looking for the cancer in my right neck, they also found a T9 spot of cancer on my bone, they thought. But neither doctor could figure out if it was prostate cancer or arthritis on either spot. And so I left there with no conclusion, no treatment plan. So the treatment plan is what I put in the chat window from Dr. Antonarakis. Basically, you guys were just talking with Brian about neuroendocrine. It's possible that I have that also, because I do have TP53 in the PTEN gene. I don't have RB1. Dr. Antonarakis is RB1. As soon as he sees a patient with that, he says that his heart sinks because he knows he can't help him. But I do have the other two. And so he's watching that for that very carefully. And what Rick just said about if you kill all the other cancer cells, you might be left with only neuroendocrine that can flourish. So that's what Dr. Antonarakis is how he's treating me, what he's thinking. He also told me that he couldn't do telemedicine like he had promised me, but he could still do my chart. He can still be my quarterback with emails on my chart. He's also told me that he's doing a carboplatin and cabaziatxel study at University of Minnesota. And he agreed with me that 40% of all prostate cancer patients that are metastatic have TP53 gene, 30% have the PTEN gene, and he says 20% are like myself, where they have both genes. And the RB1 gene is less common, but very deadly. 5 to 10% of metastatic prostate cancer patients have that. So if you don't get a test like Foundation 1, you're not going to know any of this. There may be other tests that will test those genes, but I know for a fact that Foundation 1 will do that because I did it, or Dr. Antonarakis did it for me. He's going to order the test, and that's how I found out I had those bad genes, those aggressive genes. My PSA has never been higher than 3.8.
So Joel, let me ask you a question. Joel, you never had that test before?
What test?
A somatic mutation test.
No, I only have the Foundation 1 medicine test, which is a somatic test.
But and that showed P53 and PTEN.
Yes, correct. That's
but
how
that was recent or a long time ago?
It was done by Dr. Antonarakis on 1 October 2019.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so then he said, you do have prostate cancer on my neck, even though a bunch of doctors told me they didn't know. Or so he says, the reason you have prostate cancer on your neck is because of your SUV max reading on your PSMA PET scan. If you had between 1 and 5, you probably wouldn't have prostate cancer there. If you had between 5 and 10, it would be 50-50, but you're at 11.1. So you're above 10. If you're above 10, you definitely have prostate cancer. So that's why he's giving me the, like I put in the chat, he gave me a long progress note that says just about a fifth of what he put in the progress notes. But this is my treatment plan for the very near future. He also complimented Dr. Eblin for you guys in serial-radiation oncologists who did SBRT, 3 treatments of SBRT a year ago to my left iliac bone. My second PSMA PET scan showed that there's no more cancer there at all. Also congratulated the doctors at Metro PET Center. He says, I never met him, but I've talked to him many times, and those guys really know what they're doing. So for those of you in the DC area, that's good to know.
Who was that, Joe, the doctors were?
at the Metro Pet Center. It's it's probably our biggest pet center, and they were one of the first to come up with
Okay.
the PET scan after the FDA approved it.
Okay.
So, Metro Pet Center in Fairfax. And so Dr. Ryan is still at the, I kept coming up with Dr. Ryan, what Dr. Ryan had said, and he says, yeah, Dr. Ryan's still here, by the way. He says he's going to be here for another year, even though he's doing PCF work as a director. Says he does his PCF work from home. And I see patients, prostate cancer patients, on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I see on Fridays, he and I get together and we see his prostate cancer patients. And when he leaves, it'll be passed on to Dr. Antonarakis. He was handpicked by Dr. Ryan to take over his job at the University of Minnesota. It's called the Minnesota Cancer Center. So also what we earlier talked about in this room tonight is that he's the only doctor I've been able to talk to who don't think I'm crazy. He says your diet can slow the growth of prostate cancer. And he said that you can't cure it, but you can abate it greatly with that. As proof of that, I gave him the following facts. When I saw you guys last week, I just had a PSA scan, but I did not have my reading yet, I don't think. So my PSA went down from 2 to 1.1 in 1 month. And the only reason I have for that is I changed my diet. No meat, no dessert, no pasta, no potatoes, nothing except for fish and vegetables and fruit. Lots of vegetables and fruit. So that's the only thing I got, unless the COVID vaccine. I got my 3rd shot during that period of time too, unless the COVID vaccine has something to do with it, but I don't think so. But who knows? Maybe you guys know. So my diet's the only real big change in my life. So what do you guys think of this Antonarakis decision?
I think it's well reasoned.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, he's laid it out for you. And given the radiation work for you, Joel, in other spots, this, it might, and given the current state of SBRT, that they can really narrow it down, it seems like he's got it nailed for at least what you can do now.
Yeah, that sounds right. I got a call from Dr. Eblin today, who I made an appointment yesterday with to talk about these issues. And the doctor, well, not from the doctor, I got a call from his secretary saying he wants to see you for an hour instead of half an hour. So I don't know what that's all about, but anyway, my only concern is that's about a quarter of an inch from my brain, where that bone is, occipital bone.
Occipital.
Yeah, and so any comments on that? Can the radiation oncology actually get to that bone without affecting my brain?
I wish I can't be sure, but I assume as you know, with SBRT, they can go at it with many different angles.
Right.
And presumably they can find some angles that don't invade the brain so much. I don't think they can do zero, but it may be that there's a very narrow area of the brain that they're going to hit, but not a huge area.
Yeah, I was interested in what Walter Darden had to say tonight about bones and putting glue in bones, and if they have to.
Yeah, maybe they can freeze it.
Maybe they can freeze it. That would be a question I have for Dr. Eblin, that's for sure.
Well, I would use my chart and ask Antonarakis.
Okay. Yeah, no, he's agreed to talk to me compared to Dr. Denmead. He's agreed to talk to me at any time, and he has in the past. He responds within a day or two to any of my questions I gave him in the past. So I was very happy with the visit. Yeah.
One concern I read about recently is that with cryotherapy, it can kill nerves. So
Right.
you have to be careful, that you're not damaging any nerves in the area. But getting back to Antanarachus, I agree with Herb. I think it's a well thought out strategy. He's one of the few guys who seems to take seriously this idea that all the oncologists agree with, that the longer we stay on hormone therapy, the more likely we are to be developing an untreatable form of prostate cancer. And yet they still treat us with the hormone therapies just because they happen to be working for now. So at least he's saying, well, wait a minute, let's not go down that path. Let's try avoiding that as much as we can with the SBRT. Of course, the other concern I have there, though, is there's only so much radiation you can do to your bones before you start depleting your bone marrow. So that's something you might want to talk to him about. I know there are certain areas are more important when it comes to radiation and damage to the bone marrow. Like in the pelvic area. So I'm not sure how important it is in the spine, but something to talk about with him.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
My thoughts on Antanarachus, he's always been conservative to place men on hormone therapy. He's not a guy who, at the drop of a hat, will say, "Oh, you gotta start hormone therapy." And Joel's a perfect example of that. And this continues here, where he's even questioning to what extent Joel's disease is responding to stimulation from hormone. Maybe it's coming from something else. And I think that when your PSA is relatively low as yours is, and you were able to drive it down in the last month, there's a lot of good reasons to think, maybe your disease is responding to something else, and maybe it can be treated in other ways. And so I certainly think it makes a lot of sense. The question I have for you, Joel, is who are you going to pair him up with locally? Because you've got to have somebody who's willing to work with him. I mean, he's going to work with you. From time to time, you're willing to hop on the plane and go out to Minneapolis, but you're going to need somebody local. And Denmead, Hopkins don't seem like they're the right people for you right now. What are you going to do about that?
Well, he saw me, he wrote it up. I didn't ask for that, but he wrote it up as a second opinion. And he wrote the whole progress notes to Dr. Denmead, as if he told me he was working with Denmead. And so, he said Denmead was swamped because he left him like 100 patients, and Denmead only sees patients one day or 2 days a week. And so Denmead can't handle it, basically. He doesn't have the staff at Hopkins. He did say he was sorry to leave Hopkins because Hopkins has more money in prostate cancer research than any other hospital in the world. So he says, I had a blast at Johns Hopkins. He says, I had great time there. The only reason I moved to Minneapolis is my wife is from Minneapolis. So he had no choice. So that's what he told me.
Do you think that Denmead will cooperate? Denmead will treat you in conjunction with Antanarachus?
I guess so, since there seem to be on good speaking terms. He did apologize to me twice because for Dr. Denmead's behavior with not answering my emails, because all I wanted to do is what do I do next? And Dr. Denmead didn't tell me, and Dr. Antanarachus did.
But I think you've got, Joel, I think if you really said that Denmead just inherited a shitload of patients, at least temporarily, it's going to be bad. But I think you've got your marching orders, as if in general needs marching orders.
Right. I got you. I just with your comments, I just was reminded that last week and the week before, you guys talked about Dr. Marshall. I wanted to second what Rick and think Len said, no, Herb said about Dr. Marshall. I second that. I've never seen her in person. I've never been to her office, but she gave a briefing of an interview by Mail Care, and I pegged her as very brilliant and very good just from that 1 hour briefing.
Yeah, I really hope that Gary did see him.
It wasn't Gary, it was Eric, I think.
Eric
Wyatt
Eric,
last
right,
week.
Eric Wyatt, right.
Yeah, he wrote me and he's got an appointment with her.
Good.
He set up an appointment with her. And you know what, Joel? And maybe it's possible that Dr. A could engineer this for you. Maybe you could switch from Denmead to Marshall. I mean, it's never easy to switch, but you've got an inside track with Dr. A.
Yep. Yeah, no, I never want to give Dr. A up. And Rick Davis is a very smart guy, and I appreciate his opinions. And all of you guys in this room know that already, but I really appreciate him recommending enterococcus.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking that it's possible that Dr. Marshall has a lower patient load, and she's going to have more time for you. She's going to be willing to work with Dr. Antonarakis as well, and that might be a win-win for everybody. Dr. Denmead will have one less patient. You'll work with somebody that you already have a lot of respect for at Hopkins, and she is a protege of Dr. Antonarakis. So that's a strategy just to keep in mind. And normally you can't do that. But because it's all in the family at Hopkins, Dr. Antonarakis may be able to pull that one off for you, or you could bounce it off of him.
Right. Okay, very good. So I'm hoping that my PSA goes down in December. Dr. Antonarakis said it's going to go up. So that's what he's predicting. So based on his expertise. So we'll see what happens.
I got to tell you, there's something to that Walt Dardenne diet of being a pesco-vegetarian, isn't there, Joel?
Yeah, I mean, I heard it in this room tonight. Somebody had been a vegan for a long, long time. Walter Darden, I think.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
I've been a vegan since 1975.
Oh my gosh. Oh, who was that? Jerry?
Yeah.
I started off being pure vegan, and then I switched to pesca vegan.
No, that was from Walter.
Yes.
Well, guys, I think we better move on. Thanks, Joel, for sharing that with us. It was a good conversation. Let us go. Let's see, Jimmy Greenfield left, unfortunately. So we'll go to.
Can I just say, I just want to say a very quick word about Jimmy, because I've been talking to Jimmy, and Herb's been talking to Jimmy, and he had another episode this week of a very high fever for a couple of days, and then it left. So this is the third time. His strategy now is if it happens one more time, he's going to get tested in the middle of it so they can see what's going on. But I think that the professor here may have come up with the solution, and it may have something to do with that AUS. So, maybe he keeps spiking these fevers because he's got some sort of an inflammation, and we've seen that in other situations like this, so it's possible. but we're putting a bunch of pressure on him to try and get himself sorted. And he's promised that he will if it happens one more time. So
Actually, Rick, I just texted him tonight and I really said, don't even wait.
good for you. I tried that, but he wouldn't buy it off of me.
I said, why wait? What are you going to gain?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Because I couldn't, he beat me, but he didn't beat you into something. That's what the NIH does for you. Great job. Yeah.
John Birch, would you like to be up next?
Yeah, I wanted to give an update of, it's probably been about 5 or 6 months since I was here. I've listened to some of the replays. A quick synopsis, I was diagnosed in 2006, had a prostatectomy in 06, and then followed with radiation in 07, and have been on a whole gamut of different drugs since then. Most recently, in June, I completed my 27th round of docetaxel, and my body was just wearing out from that. So we took a break, and then I did. I have an ATM mutation, and it was either Len or Rick warned me at the time that the olaparib probably wouldn't work on the ATM, and you guys were right. I did 2 months of Lynparza, and it didn't really slow the PSA. The PSA continued to climb in that period of time. So I've now switched from the olaparib to I've done 2 rounds of cabaziatxel. And have just recently taken, in the last 2 weeks, took a time out on the cabaziatxel to get several rounds of radiation treatment for some bone pain in a shoulder and my left hip. And we'll restart the cabaziatxel in December.
John,
So,
how does the cabaziatxel compare to the docetaxel with regard to how you feel?
It's a bit easier to take, certainly compared to the docetaxel, you know, in some of those later rounds of it, you know, and I don't know where the break point was. That I tolerated the docetaxel fairly well, but you know, it just continues to grind on you from a cumulative standpoint. And but the cabaziatxel is easier on the body so far.
Yeah, that's what we've heard. It's good to have it confirmed. So I'm sure Ken Anderson would like to talk.
Oh yeah. I'm like listening pretty intensely.
Yeah.
The 26 rounds of docetaxel. Have you done Xofigo yet?
Yes.
How did it work?
The Xofigo is also what is it? Radium 233.
223.
33.
223.
23.
Okay. I did 6 months of that at Sloan in that would have been 2017, 2018, and it didn't reduce the PSA. It held the PSA steady. So, you know, it's easy to say it didn't work, but on the other side, maybe it did work by holding the PSA down to where it was.
So the bone pain, did it come after? Did you do radium 223 after bone pain or prior?
Did you say bone pain, Ken?
Yeah, I did.
No, the bone pain is just very recent. After I at the end of the docetaxel and as I was starting the cabaziatxel.
Gotcha.
The 223 was what, 3.5 years ago, and it was, I was fine and functioning well, and still am for the most part.
So I've done, 30 rounds of docetaxel, 6 up front and 24 recently, and I'm planning on doing it until I can't do it anymore. So I know it's cumulative. There's side effects, no question.
Yeah, well, I think that situation is very parallel to mine. I went into it believing I was 6, maybe 7 rounds of docetaxel, but we kept after it. And took a few breaks in there, a month or 2 off. Every so often, the PSA would always responded to it, but the reason we stopped the docetaxel was it looked like the PSA was not responding as well to it, and just my physical condition from the cumulative rounds. So that's why we stopped.
How's your blood counts?
Reasonably good. Reasonably good. The whites are 5.5. Initially I was not on the Neulasta, but probably halfway through the docetaxel, I did have an infection, and after that I had the Neulasta treatment along with the docetaxel, and the hemoglobin is dipped a little bit with the radiation. It's in the 9s right now. It had been pretty steady in the 10s.
Have they talked to you about adding, addition to cabaziatxel carboplatin?
Had a brief discussion on that. I've got another condition that there's a concern that the platinum will adversely affect that. So we're sticking to just the cabaziatxel for now.
Well, good job on. It's a chore, definitely doing so many rounds of docetaxel and carboplatin for sure.
How many rounds of carbo have you done?
No, I've not done any carboplatin yet. I've not done cabaziatxel or carboplatin. I've only done docetaxel. So PSA is, bouncing around. It's pretty high. I think it's pretty high. It's in the 40s. So, but it is pretty much being contained by docetaxel. So I'm going to continue to do it until lutetium is available. So,
well, I think that's the right approach, as long as the the PSA is being managed by the chemo, and you can tolerate it physically. There's no reason. My understanding and what I experienced, I don't think there's a reason to stop it.
Right. So you stopped it because the physical element was too great.
Yeah, it did, and the PSA impact was lessening too, significantly. So, and at the time my PSA was in the like 2,500 range. Going off of it, it climbed over 3,000.
Wait, John, 2,500, 2,500.
Yeah, I mean, 40 is kids play by comparison.
I know. Paul's always told me it's not about PSA.
That's right.
I mean, I used to worry about, a 2-point rise or a 1.5 rise, and I don't worry about that anymore. But 2,500, that's pretty. Is that where you are at the moment?
I'm right at 3,000. It's come down now on the cabaziatxel, gotcha. which is a positive. But yeah, I mean, everything my doc at Sloan and now at UT Southwest, I'm in Dallas. The PSA is a number, but
it's a number.
It can get too big at some point.
All right, Lynn. Sorry for taking over. It's back to you.
Oh,
Thanks,
that's
John.
fine, Ken. Thank you for the great conversation. Okay, John, questions?
Yeah, well, before that, I just want to make one quick comment, and then we'll go to questions from John. first of all, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, where else can you hear two guys with so much chemo each under their belt talking to each other about their experiences? It's remarkable. And it's a privilege for us to be sitting here and eavesdropping on this conversation between John and Ken. And of course, we just wish you both only the very best. The other thing I wanted to say was that, and some people don't really, it's not talked about a lot, but different people make PSA in different amounts. And there are people that make a lot of PSA. And there are others that don't make PSA at all. Now that's not necessarily because of neuroendocrine disease. I mean, I can think of at least one guy with serious disease who is not a PSA maker. And then other people like John. So PSA isn't always, as Ken said, and as Paul Korn says, it's not always a great measurement, but it is in many cases. So that's all I wanted to say. And John, back to you if you've got questions for us.
Hey, Rick. No, I don't. But the one thing I would observe is, it's been mentioned about diet tonight. I haven't really changed any dietary effects. But one thing is, in my life, exercise has also come up, and I've been very active my whole life. I'm 66, and I was a runner for about 45, 47 years before I finally gave it up. But I think that had a pretty positive impact on the strength of my bones and my bone structure, which I've been metastatic now for some period of time. I really don't know when, because that's the other piece. My doc at Sloan, it was PSA is just a number, but there was no reason to talk about metastatic or not, because it's at some point it's kind of a state of a mind and it affects you. But I think my bone strength has helped me throughout this as well. But at some point it starts to wear down, and I'm starting to get some bone pain, which is what triggered the radiation this month. So I'm happy to entertain any other questions people have. Otherwise, I just wanted to share the update, in particular the olaparib view on the ATM mutation. It had no impact for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Questions for John?
What?
Questions for John? Anybody else before Len moves on? Go for it, Len.
Okay. We will go to Jim Jeffries next. And then after Jim, we'll go to Jim Barnes. So is Jim Jeffries still with us? Yes, he is.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Len, I know you talked about drug holidays, and I'm coming up on a year of being on Eligard, and I'm looking forward to possibly another drug holiday, as far as I meet with the oncologist tomorrow. But my levels have been relatively low, and a couple of years back I was on Eligard for 2 years and went off and had a holiday. So just wanted to throw that out as I know we had some discussion before about if your levels are low and staying within range, then maybe a drug holiday is not a bad thing. So I just want to throw that out for maybe some guidance.
Yeah, well, I was diagnosed in 2014, so 7 years ago, and half of that time I've been on drug holiday. I'm a Gleason 9. I'm still here. I'm undetectable right now. So for me, it's worked. And Peter also, I don't know if he's still with us, Peter Kafka. He's been on some extensive drug holidays, and he's doing fairly well right now. So I think it's important to build your bone strength, muscle strength, maybe recoup some cognitive functioning. I think it's a good thing. And, you know, as long as you're monitoring your PSA, when you see it start to go up, if you get uncomfortable, you talk to your doctor and see if you should go back on or try some other therapy. Yeah, there have been clinical trials, continuous ADT versus intermittent ADT. Sometimes they show no difference. Sometimes they show positive benefit for intermittent. So you're pretty much on your own. You're not going to get agreement among medical oncologists on this topic. Just how important is the quality of life to you? You know, that's a big consideration.
Right. So thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm lobbying towards, let's go off of the Eligard for a while and continue to monitor the levels, and then make a decision if they start popping up again. I was successful, kind of like your situation, Len. I was diagnosed in March of 2017, and I had 2 years on, 2 years off, now a year on, and maybe looking forward to another holiday. So I'm glad to hear that others have had positive experience with the holiday. So thank you. I appreciate your comments.
Okay, anybody else want to comment to Jim on this topic? If not, then we'll go to Jim Barnes. Thank you, Jim Jeffries.
Thank you.
Jim, take a holiday.
Thank you.
There you go.
I'd love to take a holiday. I come to this chat every week. I don't talk much, but I just learned so much from you guys, and applaud everybody for sharing what they share. It's incredibly helpful. I walk into my meetings with my doctors so much better informed and being able to pronounce medications, and it's so helpful. So, but I was just saw my oncologist today, my GU oncologist here at Hillman Cancer Center in Pittsburgh, and we were reviewing the bone scans that I had last week. Last year I was diagnosed like in June, and had Gleason 9 in the prostate, and then had a big spot on L4 in my spine, and I had the prostate radiated. It intended, originally told me they were going to radiate the L4 vertebrae, and they did not. The doctor at the last minute said he didn't want to. He said there was too much integrity in the bone there, and he didn't want to mess with that. So it's like, okay, that's we'll see how it plays out. Well, here I am a year later. Just had a bone scan last week. Just was at my GU oncologist today, and that spot is gone. That was on L4. So that was really made my day. So I was really excited about that. I've been on ADT for a year. Isn't that great?
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic,
Great,
Jim.
Congrats.
That's great.
That's
Love
good.
it, Jim.
Great, wonderful.
I can swing a golf club with confidence now. Not very well, but I have confidence.
Well, Jim, you don't have an excuse anymore.
Right.
That's the problem.
I'm good with that. I'm totally good with that.
Okay.
The bad news was there was another spot that showed up in my pelvis, and so my PSA has been rising, but it's gone from like undetectable to 0.1 to 0.2 to 0.3 to 0.5 just today, and I think that's probably due to, the doctor thinks it's probably due to, I was on half the dose of enzalutamide. I couldn't handle the 160 milligrams a day. It was just too much. The side effects were too much for me in terms of anxiety and everything else. And I'm still working. I still run a business and things like that. So, which I think I'm starting to feel pretty stupid for doing that. But he is switching me from enzalutamide to apalutamide, and the full dose along with prednisone. So I'm going to make that switch on a full dose.
Wait, you won't, apalutamide is related to enzalutamide, and you wouldn't need prednisone. So you're sure he's not going to put you on abiraterone plus prednisone?
No.
Could I say?
No,
Really?
you said, no. If I'm not mistaken, you're taking the prednisone for another reason. Isn't that right, Jim?
No, I was just came along with the abiraterone. I thought everybody took prednisone with abiraterone. Is that not correct?
He's switching to Abby, not apalutamide. So,
yes,
I mean,
sorry.
I can see you getting off from enzalutamide. I might have pushed for darolutamide just to see if you could get it off label, but abiraterone with prednisone is standard. So
yeah. So I think the misunderstanding here, now I'm getting it, is that you said apalutamide, you meant abiraterone, which is what Ken corrected us. But what I want to say is this. Why don't you ask Dr. Appelman to scan you with a technetium 99 scan, a technetium 99 bone scan? That's old technology, okay? If it turns out that that spot on your pelvis doesn't show up with the technetium 99 scan, then you will be able to get darolutamide. That was what Len did, all right? Because you'll be non-metastatic. Now, we know you're metastatic. We know, we just saw it, right? But when they got the approval, Bayer did it with this loophole using technetium 99 technology. So if you use the old technology and it doesn't show up on the old technology, as far as Bayer is as far as FDA is concerned, you're non-metastatic and you're eligible for the darolutamide. Does that make sense? Am I making sense to you, Jim?
Oh, I hear what you're saying. I can't connect the dots. I just don't know enough. But I hear exactly the recommendation that you're putting forward for me to explore with the doc for sure.
yeah, Jim, jump on it 100%. If in fact it doesn't show any bone mets, darolutamide is the better choice. So I would try hard to jump on it.
You're going to feel better. You're not going to have the same fatigue that you're feeling on the darolutamide, I suspect. And if it's a small pelvic spot, you might get lucky and it might just not show up on the technetium 99 scan. That's assuming the bone scan he gave you was not a technetium 99. Usually they use something better. They use better technology than that today. So, but it could have been. And if it was a technetium 99, then this strategy isn't going to work.
Do you know what kind of scan you had, Jim? Was it PSMA?
Oh, it was definitely not a PSMA.
Oh, so it probably was the type of scan that Rick is talking about.
Oh, it was not an Oxyman scan. It was not a PSMA scan for sure. Because I've talked to him a number of times about those.
What about Axumin? Do you think you may have had an Axumin scan?
No, it was not an Axumin scan.
Okay, so you're pretty much left with technetium. Okay, so what did they decide to do? Oh, that's right. You're back on Abby plus prednisone. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, that's course treatment moving forward. And his comment with regards to Axumin scan or the PSMA scan was, it really doesn't. It's like it really not going to change the course of treatment if there's additional spots that show up.
So those spots developed while you were on enzalutamide, is that right?
Correct. A half a dose, 80 milligrams a day, and
Right.
Eligard.
Because there's a clinical trial they call CARD, C-A-R-D, that demonstrated that if patients had been on one second-line anti-androgen like you were, enzalutamide, and then they put you on abiraterone, you don't do as well as if they follow up the enzalutamide with cabaziatxel.
Okay.
Which kind of makes sense, because usually if you're not doing too well on one of those second anti-androgens, you have a pretty slim chance of doing any better on another one. Now the caveat there is that the trial also, all the patients had previous exposure to docetaxel. Now, did you ever get docetaxel?
No.
Okay. So then they might not be willing to put you on cabaziatxel. They'll probably put you on docetaxel. But in any case, it's still probably.
Was that oligometastatic or not? Was that in an oligometastatic population or not? Do you remember?
Actually, I'm not sure. I could look it up, I guess.
Because that's another issue, that Jim has always been oligometastatic.
Right.
So, and Jim, are they talking about spot radiation for this pelvic lesion?
My GU oncologist was going to talk to the radiation oncologist to see if that would be if the radiation oncologist would want to radiate that spot or not.
Questions for Jim, anybody? Suggestions, questions, thoughts? Well, if none, I just want to give a quick.
No. I would say definitely, Jim, continue to work on darolutamide as a possibility. You know, Lynn's comment is 100% correct. If you switch from enzalutamide to abiraterone, I mean, the odds are it's going to keep your T levels low, but it may not control cancer growth. It'll take, you know, possibility. It'll take a number of the cancer cells and hold them from growing, because testosterone does in fact drive, you know, some of the cells, but not all of them. So you may have PSA rise even on abiraterone, but you know, I would work on darolutamide just to make sure that it's either ruled out as an option, you know, with the scan, as Rick stated, or not. So I'd work on it.
I'm definitely going to look into that.
So I just want to say very quickly before everybody jumps off, of course, first of all, happy Thanksgiving from AnCan to everybody, whoever's left.
Same to everybody else.
And secondly, we are doing another Solo Arts Heal tomorrow night. If you did not see last month's with Elliot Kerman, you missed an absolute treat. Elliot was one of the founders of Rockapella and is an AnCan moderator, and we love him, and he was fantastic last month. And you'll find his show on our website, on the link that I put there. And for tomorrow, we've got also a really great performer coming in tomorrow. She'll be talking mostly, I think, about addiction and mental health issues, but she sounds like Minnie Riperton to me, and I'm going back a bit. So if you remember Minnie Riperton, come listen to this lady tomorrow night, because she's very special, and she's a friend of John Ivory's. John Ivory found her in Chicago, and I think it'll be another really good show. So 2 tips, Nair for tomorrow night, and definitely, if you haven't seen Elliot Kerman, you got to watch the show that he and I did last month, because it was great. And I say that myself.
And then one other thing, Rick, before we go, for those of you that care, we should enjoy our vegan latkes on Sunday night.
Oh, yes. That's right. Of course. That's right. Yes. Happy Hanukkah. I forgot to put that in.
Hanukkah is Sunday night.
Good Yontif.
Good Yontif. I will put that in. We'll get that into the next.
I would also like to express my thanks to everybody here and say, for a group that I wish I wasn't a part of, this is really a great experience and very helpful.
Steve, none of us want to be a part of this group.
I know. It's good to have company on this
journey.
I got a feeling Mr. Fish wants to say something because he just switched on his camera. Did you want to say something, Mr. Fish?
No, I didn't switch my mic on. No, I was just wanted to check in. I was eating before.
You were sleeping. We thought you were having a nap.
Eating.
We thought you were taking a nap there.
No, with that discussion between the extended docetaxel discussion was incredible.
Ken and John, yeah, that's my highlight. That's going to be my editor's pick for the week. All right, guys.
Okay, good night.
Thanks for joining, guys.
Good night, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Happy
Good
Thanksgiving.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks.
You should ask